I've run out of superlatives for Nick, honestly, and he's my favorite player on the team. You can tell everybody else has said that. I have a favorite kid too. She's not here, but Nick does the right thing all the time, and to see what he's gone through to come back and put himself where he is, just to be back playing in the first place, and then to be back out there and performing like he's performing, scoring for this football team when we need him the most. He's a special player, but he's a great person.
How many kids?
Nick Chubb, as you can see, not the most efficient game from Chubb, just 20 carries for 59 yards, but he does score the 2 touchdowns, including the game winner at the end. And I think the most important thing, Matthew, played 64% of the snaps.
Yeah, I think he ran more than we expected him to because, honestly, they were moving the ball. Like, they were in this game competitively, obviously, throughout the game. They ended up winning, and they were moving the ball. Like, it's weird to say that they were moving the ball and running effectively, but it did feel like they did, even though the fact, as you see the numbers there, 20 rush attempts, 59 yards. He averages 3 yards a carry. Yeah. I mean, he basically was just sort of falling forward. It's a tough matchup against, but he does get into the end zone twice. Ends up with 19 fantasy points. It's his best fantasy game this season. He's been under 11 fantasy points in each of the previous 4 games. So it's kind of, ironic, typical of this season, right? That he, his best fantasy game of the year is against the Steelers.
Indeed. Yeah.
I still feel like going forward, I don't know that there's much that changes here. He's a touchdown-dependent RB2.
Yep.
He's a volume-based and touchdown-dependent RB2 going forward, is my take.
I think the thing is, the Browns, I think their backfield's pretty easy to understand now. If they're playing with a lead or in a close game, it's going to be Chubb with 2/3 of the carries or so like he got last night. And if they're down, which they're probably going to be down more often than not because they have a really tough schedule the rest of the way, it's probably going to be the Jerome Ford show, and he played 2/3 of the snaps last week against the Saints. So Jerome Ford, because they were in relatively favorable game script, he just didn't do much. 4 carries for 19 yards, just has the 1 catch for 8 yards, so he doesn't cash our over on the receiving. So I think Jerome Ford is just really a fantasy non-entity for the time being.
And he caught that reception for 8 yards on the first drive, and the line was 11.5. I'm like, we're in great shape. That was your bet as well. We'll get to mine, which also didn't cash. But the other thing about Chubb, to your point about the schedule, at Denver next week, then at Pittsburgh, home to Kansas City, at Cincinnati. So it's certainly tough. If there's one positive here, none of those offenses except for maybe Cincinnati are explosive. I get it. Bo Nix and the Broncos were awesome against the Falcons last week, but I don't know that they go into Denver and they get blown out by their defense is good enough that's going to keep them in games, and so that's what you're sort of hoping for here at Denver, at Pittsburgh, home to Kansas City, the next 3 coming up for Nick Chubb. Again, it's got to be volume-based and touchdown-based because he has 1 game this year, only 1 game this year that he's run for above 3.3 yards per carry. He looked better last night, Jay, but he still doesn't look like Nick Chubb to me.
He doesn't look like the old Nick Chubb, which makes a lot of sense given how catastrophic that injury was and the fact that this offensive line is healthier, but it's also older and just hasn't been clicking at the highest level. One good thing with Nick Chubb is that, like, if you do have Nick Chubb on your team and you wanted to put the second Baltimore game anywhere on the schedule, you'd want to put it in Week 18 when it doesn't matter for fantasy purposes because they have such a good run defense. But I think Chubb, to your point, RB2, touchdown dependence.
Yeah, no passing game usage, just 1 reception for 1 yard on 1 target in this one as well. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.